Welcome into the I-80 Boys podcast. I am actually the host, Chris Baca, and this Joe Twister over here. Who is this guy?
And I tell you one thing, and you just got to keep running with it. I am, I guess, the co-host of this clown house out here. One Christian, aka the younger, less geriatric-looking fuck version of Chris. In every possible way, I am better.
Sorry, I was having some audio difficulties there. But no, I got you, Christian. What's up, my man? How you doing? What's good? How you been, man?
Man, I've been pretty good. Like I said, I think it's been a long week, a good week, but a long one. Ready to get into some football, Chris. How have you been?
I've been good, man. It's warming up outside, dude. Got that pool going. Work's been fine. Just ready for some college football, dude. I really am, man. I've been watching the NBA playoffs. I've watched some college baseball. Man, I'm just MLB, you name it, man. I love sports altogether, obviously, but man, I want some college football, dude. I really truly do. I know it's going to be a couple months, but This is what I love. So,
dude, I didn't realize you had a pool. What have you been like laying around with a banana hammock over there or something?
Oh, 100% with my chode, just out there, butt naked, sunning. It looks like a dried up bean. I mean, I don't know. No, I'm good, man. No, dude. It's just that time of year, man. I love being outside, dude. I do a lot of work around the house, dude. You know how it is, man. I don't know if you know anything about work, but I enjoy it. Love being outside. Got a little tan today. Hit the gym this morning. I don't know if you know anything about a gym either, but here we are.
We're going to see. Like I said, we were talking about it before the show kicked off. I think one of the big things is we're going to set a date. We're going to set a date for this combine. We got to do it before the July 4th weekend. Really got to make sure we do that. So, there's bragging rights, and let's just say there might be a wrestling singlet involved with this whole thing now.
And that'll turn some people on. But, hey, big topic. Why are you guys fucking tuned in for? Christian, what the hell are we talking about today, brother? What are we doing?
Well, we're gonna switch it up a little bit, Chris. We're gonna talk a little bit about some TCU Horned Frogs, man. We're gonna preview them and see what their season's about. Chris, I mean, what do you think, man? What do you think about the old Frogs?
I mean, off the rip, dude, when you bring up TCU, I think last year, national title game, I think their national title game personally was against Michigan. I mean, let's be honest, Chris, you watched that game in the BCS play, or not the BCS playoffs, I apologize, in the playoffs against Michigan, man. That big win, dude, that was huge. I think that was TCU's probably biggest win, was it not? I mean, that was everything. Michigan was a hot team coming into that. It looked like Michigan to me took about a month and a half off before they played that game. But no, I think TCU, man, I'm like really happy with like where they're going with their program. It was good to see a Big 12 representative like come out there, man. They showed out, dude. They did. I know you're going to laugh. I know you're kind of sucks talking to you because you're the Georgia fan, obviously. You're the team with the fucking banners in the background, the complete ass kicking that was the national title game. But yeah, did TCU necessarily deserve to be there? No, probably not. But TCU, if you're a TCU fan, last year had to be like their national title year, dude. I mean, it had to be if you were a fan.
Yeah, that long pause there, that was the moment of silence for that game that they had. I had to have another one, again, for them. Look, Chris, you're absolutely right. Last year was like an all-time high fever pitch for them, because I think that's probably the closest they've come, right, to possibly winning a national championship, especially. Well, no, because I mean, you got to remember the Andy Dalton years were pretty good. LaDainian Tomlinson, I don't know if they were. I can't remember off the dome, but I mean,
they were relevant, Christian. But I mean, making a playoff and winning the Big 12, how they won it, like I mean, that was like it was. They beat K-State, and then that they played Michigan in that epic game, high scoring game. I'm just saying from like a higher perspective, like that had to be probably the best. I mean, was that not? I guess I'll hear a hot take. Was that the best year in TCU football history last year?
In recent memory, yes. I really have not probably dug back. I'm sure somebody will be like, Well, actually, the 1974 Horned Frogs won, whatever. So,
Right. But I mean, we're all going to remember that. Like I think last year, if you're, I mean, everybody that's watching the pod and watches our shit, that they probably know, like, TCU had a hell of a fucking year last year. I mean, I thought that was crazy, and like, I'm happy for them. Like, as far as our preview goes, we'll talk about that here in a second. But it was like, man, that was a great year for TCU. I would have took a year like that for as a Nebraska fan, dude. I think,
I think
would have took that 8 years ago. Like
99.99% of teams in college football, pretty much everybody except for Georgia would have taken that season that TCU had last year.
100%.
I mean, really and truly. So, yeah, I think they did a fantastic job last year, Chris. I don't want to minimize that at all. I mean, everything just kind of went exactly right, except for that last game of the year. There was really two times, and we'll talk about it here. Sonny Dykes, his first year at TCU last year, he led him to a 13-2 record, right? Wow. And they ended up all the way, we talked about it, right? So they make it to the national championship game, and they lost to Georgia, right? So, but before that, they lost to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game in that last second, overtime thrilling loss, where they they couldn't punch it in on the goal line. K-State ends up icing it and winning the game. But to me, that was just part of the season. I mean, TCU had a ton of great games last year. It was fun watching them. Is exactly what you would look for, I guess, in a college football team. Chris, let me ask you a question here. As we kind of get into this, the big question, right, is how far can they go without Max Duggan this year?
And before I answer that question, I apologize. I probably said that TCU won that Big 12 title game. Sorry, I take that back. I know K-State won that game. That was a hell of a football game, by the way. Anybody that watched the Big 12 title game last year, crazy good football game. Max Duggan, who you talk about, was the reason why they were even in that fucking game, by the way. That was an epic performance by that kid. He's from Council Bluffs, not too far from you and I. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's the problem I have with them this year. That kid, I think, as a college football quarterback, there's a difference between a great quarterback, right? When people say, oh, this guy was a great quarterback. Well, NFL versus college is much different. Look at Tim Tebow type of thing, right? Tim Tebow is probably arguably maybe one of the greatest, most accomplished college quarterbacks of all time. Sucked in the NFL, though. And I'm not going down that road, but I'm saying Max Duggan's a guy, man, he was a great college quarterback. Dude, that guy is a fucking stud. And what he did for TCU last year, I don't want to say single-handedly. That's not what I'm saying. But he was the majority of the reason why they won a lot of football games, and he's the reason why they beat Michigan in the playoff. Without him, I don't know what they do this year. Christian, you're the stat guy. You're the numbers guy. I mean, you know this shit. I believe it's Chandler Morris? Is that the guy they got coming in? I don't know a lot about the kid. You might be able to educate me on this here in a second. And they lost Quentin Johnson at wide receiver. He went to the Chargers. I believe he was 22nd, 23rd in the draft. Kicking plays, big dude, big body receiver. I could talk about NFL guys all day, but he was a stud last year for them. I mean, on the other end of the ball. Duggan, if he did throw the ball, he threw it up to him, and he was going to go get it type of guy. Kind of remind me of a poor man's Calvin Johnson in college. So I don't know. TCU this year, I think it's kind of a question mark. I don't think their defense was great last year necessarily. Maybe Big 12-wise. You guys know my theory on the Big 12 and the Pac-12 defenses. I say it all the time. I think they're a little softer than the other conferences. But offensively, I think TCU maybe can compete this year. But defensive side of the ball and the quarterback being kind of a question mark, unless, Christian, you're going to tell me something I don't know about this guy, which you probably will. I know you want to talk right now as you're over there. Go ahead and give it to me real, buddy. I want to hear it.
So Chandler Morris, first of all, he actually won the job last year coming out of that camp. He was the one that was his team. I think in the first game of last year, he got hurt.
Wow.
And then Max Duggan stepped in and ended up being sort of never gave the job back, right? So that was right. Morris, and I kind of was looking up some scouting reports, and one of the Baylor former Baylor defensive coordinator, now he's over at Auburn, I can't remember his name. One of the things he talked about was they were more scared of Chandler Morris than they were of Max Duggan because of Morris's ability to kind of, he was a more dynamic athlete. Like he can move around, he can beat you with his legs, he can create things. So for me, as long as he can stay healthy, I think this kid, and I think, as far as the quarterback position is concerned, I think they're going to be more than okay there. Wow. I think he's going to be pretty good this year. The thing is, you look at everything else around them, and I think they're also going to be good. I mean, they got a shit ton of Alabama players that transferred over there. So you've got some of the best players in the country that were at Alabama in their classes transferring to the Big 12, and they're reloading. I mean, that's the new pipeline right there, dude. Alabama to TCU. Who would have thought?
That's crazy, man. And I appreciate it. And this is why I love this show. And this is why I love having you on there or on here is like I did not know that kid was actually a starter last year. I mean, I pride myself. I'm more of an NFL guy. I know my college shit too, more than most, but I did not know that, man. That actually surprised me, dude. That's impressive knowledge, by the way, Christian. That's impressive, man. I did not know that. No, but if this kid can play, I think TCU has a chance. I mean, Christian, we talked about this several times about the Big 12, right? You throw at a dartboard every year in that fucking conference. Who wins it, right? I mean, there's been 7 different winners the last 7 years, something crazy stat like that. Like,
yeah.
I mean, who's to say? I know TCU then obviously says that history says that they're not going to win it this year, but you never know. I mean, I think with TCU the big thing is like I was not impressed with their defense, to be honest. I mean, maybe in the Big 12 they were up there, but like overall, give up a lot of points. We know how the Big 12 is. It's kind of a track meet most weeks. But if they can put up points, they can find a guy to replace Quentin Johnson on the outside. Sonny Dykes, he might have himself a team again, man. They might be right in that running.
I think he is, man. Look, yeah, like you said, they lost Quentin Johnson, but do they get Alabama transfer JoJo Earl? I mean, I know you've heard of JoJo Earl. I have, certainly.
Yep.
They also get Oklahoma State transfer J.P. Richardson, and both of them should be really, really good for him.
Okay.
They're also bringing back Savion Williams and tight end Jared Wiley, who last year both had 4 touchdowns apiece. So that's pretty big. So they're getting back some good receivers there. They've got some depth. They can spread the ball around, right? The running back room, now they lose out on some of their running backs that they had, but, dude, they brought in Trey Sanders, another Alabama transfer, right? So they're going to put him alongside Amani Bailey, who had 250 yards and 2 touchdowns last year as the number 3 running back, right? So to me, offensively, I think they're going to be all right, man. I mean, they are. They're going to rebound and they're going to do really well. I think, we'll kind of talk about this a little bit later on and we'll kind of get into a little more of it, but I think kind of like you said, the Big 12 every year, it's like throwing a dart at a dartboard, man. It's everybody else reloaded too. I mean, you look at what Texas and Oklahoma and some of these other schools are doing. They went out and they got players in the transfer portal too. They got guys that are coming back that are going to be a year better.
No, exactly. Then K-State. I mean, I know they lost our boy from Nebraska, Adrian Martinez, and they don't have Skylar Thompson back there anymore, obviously either. But like, they're going to be in the running. I think K-State's one of those teams that hangs around. I think Baylor's going to be hanging around. Oklahoma State, man. Gundy, who I love to death. I love that guy. They're always relevant, right? I mean, there's always just the Big 12 is just such a it's a dartboard. I mean, every year there's been somebody else to come out of that conference. So like, could TCU do it again? I think they could. Do I think it happens? No, I don't. But I mean, would it surprise me if TCU comes out of that thing again? For back to back, I'd be pretty surprised. But like, after you give me this whole fucking essay on this backup quarterback that was actually a starter, like, hey, maybe they can't. No, but I mean, those guys they do bring back some experience on both sides of the ball. So it's like, hell, why not? Big 12? This isn't the Big 10. We know who the Big 10 is going to be this year. Ohio State, Michigan, mix in maybe some Penn State, maybe some Wisconsin, possibly Nebraska being in the running of the top 5 teams there. Whatever. We all know what we can write off Georgia down in the SEC. No, fuck no. So ACC looking like Clemson, Florida State, and maybe maybe some UNC, which you're not high on. Pac-12, right? I'm just going down the line of conferences. We all know like Oregon, Washington, USC, right? And not in that order, but it could be any of those teams. Who the fuck are we looking at in the Big 12 this year? I mean, let's be honest. Texas, you got the height, you got the Manning kid, you got all this bullshit going on there. You got Oklahoma, right? Bringing back a ton of people, Christian. The Big 12 was just that one where it's just like big old fat question mark. I mean, it's just like, well, it could be anybody. And that's what I love about the Big 12. It's like, hey, we don't know. Sorry to interrupt you there, but no, I'm just carrying on here. The Big 12 is just like, would it surprise me if TCU came out of it? Not really. Maybe a little bit, just because nobody's done it like back-to-back years now it's been forever since Oklahoma did it.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you're exactly right. I mean, Daniel says, Texas Tech has a good chance. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing too. Texas Tech, they played a lot of teams really good last year.
Yep.
And they, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, we'll get into their schedule here in a bit, but I mean, TCU travels to Texas Tech to play them this year. So, I mean, there is, there's, again, we could say, hey, the Big 12 is not good, but I mean, I think it's just one of those things where, it's such an offensive driven league that it's so hard to really figure out who can make at least a couple stops on defense, is really going to probably end up being.
Right. And to, add on to your comment, it's not, I hate this. I catch some flack because I really bag on the Pac-12 and the Big 12 a lot. And it's not because I think the conference is, I don't want to say, I use the word soft, but it is those leagues. I mean, all you got to do is look it up. Like, I mean, this isn't fucking rocket science. It's like both those two conferences don't have an established, like, couple teams that really rely on defense. It's always track meets. It's always a high scoring, high affair. And if you're that type of fan that loves that, unfortunately, though, if you're that type of fan, your team is not winning any national championships. Like, it's just is what it is. And that's why the Georges of the world, why they're putting fucking, how many guys you guys put in the NFL the last 2 years, Christian? I mean,
I would say comfortably, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 25 have been drafted in the last couple of years.
For a fucking good reason. Like, it's like, that's what you guys do. And that's what Bama's done before you. And Clemson's put a bunch of guys in there. Like, that's what it is. And it's like those two conferences, though, don't have an established couple top tier teams every year. Now, the Pac-12 does have USC. We know about them. Lincoln Riley kind of brought them back, I guess I would call prominence, to be honest with you, even though they fucking got their ass kicked in that bowl game last year by a no-name team. And I don't want to say no-name team, but Tulane kind of came in there and handed it to them. I mean, it's just like the Big Ten is always, it's always been Michigan, Ohio State. No, not necessarily, but it's those teams get better players, sure, but the style of play is much different, just like it is in the SEC. I think that's where I'm at. To wrap my comments up, I'm going on a tangent here, but I just get upset when people tell me that I don't know shit, when it's like, man, have you watched the Pac-12? Have you watched the Big 12 lately? It's a lot of high-scoring games, not a lot of defense. Defense wins you championships. Nobody's going to tell me any fucking differently. Look at history. You got to have a top defensive team, Christian, to win a fucking national championship. You guys know that more than anybody. Just look at your players.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, what's funny about this? I want to say, now I haven't researched this, but I'm just guessing here. I think the Big 12 has actually won a national championship before the Pac-12 has, or I guess you would say more recently, right? Because I think you have to go all the way back to like 2005 Texas.
Oklahoma won one back with Stoops. Is like his only one he ever won was against Florida State. I think, right? Didn't he win one? Didn't he beat? I swear to God, it was a low-scoring affair. God, am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think Oklahoma did win one, right, with Sam Bradford.
God, was it him?
Was it him, or did they?
Or did they lose that game?
I know the last Pac-12 Pac-12 team to win one was USC. Right, in like 2004.
USC 04. Yes. Yep. That was that stack. Then they tried to repeat and they got beat by that Texas team, right? So Texas was the last one, and then it was USC right in there. After that, dude, there hasn't been anybody. Oregon played in one with Marcus Mariota. I do remember that against Cam Newton and Auburn, and that was a fucking shit show. I mean, Oregon, that was Scott Frost's offensive team. You know what I mean? He was the offensive coordinator, trying to run that. That was kind of when the innovation of like run a million plays before the snap and all that crap and all that shit went on, dude. They got their asses they were so unmatched, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They had no answer for anybody. So yeah, that's what I mean though. I guess maybe I'm touching on your topic there or comment there where it's like both those conferences just don't put up the type of teams, I guess, because they don't really play much defense. And I hate to piss people off. I'm not knocking on those teams. I'm just saying, no defense being played, Christian. It's hard to win a national title if you don't play any fucking defense.
Yeah, but I mean, exactly like you said. I mean, with that being said, I mean, bet on the Pac-12 this year because you probably make a shit ton of money.
Better pray you're right.
Yeah. No, but let's take a look at it. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go.
I was gonna say, look, they ranked 95th last year. TCU did in total defense, but I think when you watch them, it felt like they played better than that. Getting away from the stats for who they played and what they did. I mean, I would have said, hey, they're probably a top 50 defense. Now, here's the thing, and I started thinking about this. This is where sometimes stats can kind of lie to you a little bit, because sometimes you can have a team that statistically is really good on defense, but they only play 2 or 3 really good teams and they get fucking waxed. And then you can have a team that ends up playing really good teams throughout the year, and they just unfortunately have a couple of games where they give up a shit ton of points but still win.
No, you're not wrong. No, I'm not. I mean, I'm a big stat guy. They exist for a reason, but it's like, yeah, it depends on your offense though too, right? And your schedule. Like if you're a team blowing out everybody and then your defense is on the field in the second half because you're putting your scrubs in on offense, yeah, you might get some points scored against you, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I don't think, would you say 97th?
95th.
Jesus. It's just the back half of fucking college football. But they played what, Christian, in the national title?
They did that. You could say that they played. Well, I mean, they showed up.
Did they actually show up, in your opinion, being a Georgia fan, though?
The lights were on, but nobody was home.
I'm done talking. I got nothing else to say.
No, I think they're going to be much better this year, though, Chris. And this is why I'm optimistic about it. I mean, they returned most of their linebackers and secondary. All right, they only lost 2 players or 2 contributors, if you want to put that, from last year on that team. I think it was a linebacker, and then it was LaDainian Tomlinson's, I think his nephew or one of his relatives. So, but they did an excellent job. Chris, we talk about this all the time, at rotating guys in and out, which I think is very undervalued, at this level, because a lot of teams just want to, especially if you're a smaller school, they just want to kind of play certain guys and just get them all the reps. But I think Sonny Dykes did a fantastic job at rotating guys in and out throughout the year. So this year it pays off and it makes big dividends. I think probably the biggest question mark I have is the defensive line. That to me is where I want to see a massive improvement for them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that would it be a stretch, Christian, to say that their defense finishes higher than 95th this year?
No, I don't think so at all. I think I would actually expect them to finish a lot higher.
Right. And would that be, in your opinion, I guess I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit, but like, if their defense does play better, could you see them competing for a Big 12 title again? I know we're going to go through the schedule here in a minute, but
I think they're going to have to. Yeah. So I would say if they do, then yeah, I think they've absolutely got a really good shot at it.
Okay. And to add on to your comment, yeah, no, I do trust Sonny Dykes. Like, first year coach last year, dude, that pretty impressive, right? I mean, taking them that far.
Yeah.
I mean, God, I'm a Nebraska fan. Like, I'll literally go out and like blow a guy for $20 right now to get to the national title, like easily. Like, I hate to say that on air, but it's like, that's how bad I want to be there. And it's like, I mean, they got to be happy with last year's results. I know I hate the fact that they got blown out. What was the final score of that game, by the way? Say
it. For the Georgia TCU game?
Yeah.
It was like 65-7. Hold on one second.
Yeah,
Let me see.
Yeah.
I want to give you accurate stats here.
Of course you would, because you're that guy. I mean, it was atrocious. I know it was bad. Your guys' second string was score on them. I think I did hear that Georgia only punted the ball like one time during that game. Like, I watched it all, but it was just
65-7.
Jesus. I shouldn't have questioned you. I learned my lesson, but no, I mean, it was just that's the point. It's like TCU still would have I would have took that if I was a Nebraska fan last year, right? I think 97% of us, there's people in here that love Bama and all those other teams, but it's like Ohio State and all that. It's like, man, I would have taken it. That was a great season for them. So can overall TCU defense play better than they did last year? I think they will. They're going to have to. I actually think that they do. They return a lot of guys. Christian, we talk about it. We're obviously big on returning people, especially in today's age. No, they'll be okay. They're going to be in that running. Like I said, Daniel brings up Texas Tech. That was a team I left off. Thanks, Daniel, by the way, bringing them up. That was a team I was actually thinking about and didn't mention them. Big 12 is going to be up for grabs again, Christian. I really, truly believe that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And kind of getting back to the defensive line. I mean, their best defensive lineman this year is it's Dominic Williams, right? He's a defensive tackle for him, had 1.5 sacks last year. So for a defensive tackle, it's not bad, but you don't want your defensive tackle leading you in sacks. I know he didn't lead them necessarily in sacks, right? But as far as returning production, you definitely don't want that. So they need someone else to step up and have a big year. I mean, the good thing, they didn't really get anybody from the portal for that necessarily, but I think this all boils down to this, and I'm going to kind of go against what I'm going to say just because of this conference. This isn't a conference where they're going to try to run the ball down your throat every play. Yeah. So you don't have to necessarily have a rock solid defensive line, as far as stuffing the run game, but you do need to be able to get after the quarterback. I think, the back end should be really good for him this year, and that should help bail him out of a lot of stuff.
No, I 100% agree, Christian. I think we touched enough on the preview part. I apologize for stumbling through some of that, but I'm with you, man. I get so big on conferences. I think that's a big thing as far as where teams are located, right? I think if Nebraska was in the big, the Big 12 or the Pac-12, they'd probably have a little bit more success, and that's a topic for another day. But when you play in the Big 10 or the SEC, I think we all know it's there's a brand of football being played in conferences. And I think that's a huge, huge contributing factor of where your ranking is, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do they say? Go to the Big 12, Pac-12 to get quarterbacks, go to the SEC and Big 10 to get, defense. Right.
Yep, 100%.
So, you're absolutely right. So with that being said, let's kind of transition here, Chris, into their record prediction, man. I mean, get it pulled up there.
Boy, I'll start it off. I'm kind of going to go through this kind of slow because this Colorado game before we've talked about Colorado at length and what we both think about Dion and the program. And this is probably what game day I'm assuming is going to be at this one. I would actually assume so. I think unless there's another high marquee game going on that weekend, but Colorado, at the end of the day, after the spring game, what I saw from Colorado, which looked like a glorified fucking 7-on-7 game, as you said, Christian, which I 100% agree with. TCU's winning that one. We got Nicholas, we got Houston, SMU. I'm not saying those teams can't put up points, but TCU's the better team there out of those. So I see a 4-0. West Virginia, I don't know a ton about them, to be honest with you guys, but I'm not really worried about that. I think TCU just with their dominance. Iowa State is kind of interesting. It's at Iowa State. It's not an easy place to play. I know this as a Nebraska fan. Trust me, even though they've sucked back in the day in the 90s, they're a much better improved team. Brock Purdy ain't throwing the ball around there, though, anymore either. BYU. There's some teams in here where I'm just man, I don't know. TCU, because I can't judge them just because of what they've lost. K-State, Texas Tech, like Daniel said, there they are. Texas, Baylor. I think Baylor might be in that mix. I think they might surprise some teams in the Big 12 this year. And then we got Oklahoma, who, Christian, I know you are very high on. I believe, Christian, you put your money where your mouth was and said earlier that, and you have every right to change your prediction for the Big 12 title. I believe you said Oklahoma was your team. This gets a little hairy. And overall, what I'm saying here, I'm not going to exactly predict which team, win-loss goes for TCU, but I see an 8-4, a 7-5. God, I hate to say 7-5. I'm going to go probably 8-4. I don't know exactly which teams. I just know that bottom 4 or 5 games there, especially when in conference games. We all know how those play out. They know each other very well. They're usually close games. I could also see them. I'm not just. I don't know, man. I'm going to go 8-4 here. I looked at this earlier and I'm like 8-4. I'm leaving it at that, Christian. I really don't know what else to say. You're going to tell me 10-2 or 11-1.
Damn it. I actually did have them put down at 10-2, and
okay,
wow. I had them there at 10-2. With losses to Texas and then splitting the Baylor Oklahoma game. I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to go 9-3. Not because you said 8-4, but just as I'm looking back through it and kind of doing a little more. Just taking a look at it. Daniel has a good point here. He says they're going to run the table until that K-State stretch, right? And I think they might have a little. I think they can certainly do that. But I mean, again, you look at Iowa State, like you said, that's not going to be an easy one for them. BYU, no. They're not easy. Kansas State, they played them great last year.
Right.
I mean, they're playing a lot of these tough games away from home. So I mean, to me, I think 9-3 would be very generous. For that, I mean, that might be, that might be good enough to get them into the Big 12 championship, depending on how the rest of it shakes out. Mm-hmm.
They did this last year. They ran the table to the regular season, lost in the Big 12 title game.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible with this schedule? Could it happen again?
I would say so, but it's going to be very, very tough. I mean, again, they would need a lot of stuff to kind of bounce for them, and they would just. I mean, you never know because again, like we said, they're getting playmakers from the SEC that were 5-star guys that are top athletes that are coming in and that can kind of help out there, right? And then they're also getting guys that have played in this league before, in the Oklahoma State transfer, J.P. Richardson. There's a lot of good stuff there, and they get most of their defense back. Like I said, I like them. I think on paper it bodes well, but then again, I mean, you got to think Kansas State. Like we said, I mean, they're getting the quarterback that beat them is going to be back this year in the Big 12 championship game. Texas with Quinn Ewers and that loaded wide receiver room out there. Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. Texas Tech, we kind of talked about it. I mean, they're building something really good down there. Baylor, that's always a really tough one in those conference games. And Oklahoma, I think they got Dylan Gabriel and they got one of the best coordinators as far as offense is concerned in the country, and Jeff Lebby. To me, and this is my last point on this here, Chris. Look, I think it's like every year. This is like every year in the Big 12, right? It's going to be a toss-up. It's anyone's guess who's going to win it, or who's going to be in the hunt, late in the year. I think gut feeling, it's tough because they're having to replace a quarterback in Duggan. But like I said, I mean, Duggan didn't win that job coming out of the fall camp last year. So I think that they absolutely can. If there's any, if you put them in the Big Ten or you put them in, the SEC, it'd be really, really tough for me to say that. But I think, yeah, they can absolutely win this conference or at least compete for it, to the very end there.
No, you're exactly right. It's just funny. I'm going to throw this out here before we wrap this part of it up. Those last 5 teams there, K-State, Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, and Oklahoma, all 5 of those could win that conference. One of those 5 is going to win that conference.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. Like, that's how hard it is for me to predict. I'm not a Big 12 expert. I used to be when Nebraska was down there, but, like, that's my point. Like, look at those last 5 games for TCU. And just look at what they have returning. It's like, fuck, question mark here, question mark there. We got solid pieces here. We have solid pieces there. If this is the SEC, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. This is the SEC or the fucking Big Ten, or maybe even the Pac-12. We kind of know who the top 3 teams are probably going to be.
Yeah.
Holy shit. This fucking conference, I have no idea, man. If TCU even finishes in the top 3, that's great. You said 9-3, dude. I think that's a pretty goddamn good year, dude. I'll take a 9-3 year over here as a Nebraska fan. I've won 9 games in 2 or 3 years total. So I'll leave it there.
Let me ask you a question before we turn this over here real quick. as far as like scheduling and all that stuff's concerned, are you a big, because looking at their schedule, yeah, they play pretty much the best teams they're going to play is a 5-game murderer's row to end the season off.
Right.
Are you a big proponent in playing and getting tested early in the season and how that can develop you for later on in the season? Or are you more or less, it doesn't really matter? Like you could take the easier cupcake games early in the season, be a little more fresh, hopefully, by the time you end up playing that murderer's row.
I don't know how to answer that. I guess my thing is, like, I say it all the time on this podcast, and I truly believe this. Watch a lot of college football. It's like, I'm a big person on, you're definitely a different team than you were the start of the season, right? At the end of the season. We see it all the fucking time. Oregon last year got blown out the fucking water by Ohio State. I think they were a much better team at the end of the year, right? And that's what you should be. That's what you should strive to be, right? I think that's on any level, high school, anything.
Let me ask you this. If you're, I'll re-ask the question. As a Nebraska fan, would you want to play Michigan or Ohio State to start the season off, in the middle of the season, or at the end of the season?
Okay, this is a tough answer. This is a tough answer for me because it's like, if we lose to Michigan week 2, and then we look amazing and keep getting better, does that Michigan loss hurt me at the end of the year when it comes to maybe, competing for a Big Ten title? That's my problem with that. I would rather, though, personally, if I'm one of these people, I use teams as a measuring stick, right? I want to play the best teams. I don't give a fuck. Our records suck, right? I mean, Scott Frost gave me like 15 wins in 4 years, okay? Like, that's pathetic. I watched Clemson go 15-0 one year, not too long ago. So my thing is, I'd rather play your tough teams early because I think that's the measuring stick. That's what we need to get to. You have time to get to that. A longer, I guess, if I can explain this the right way, and I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, but you have more time to get to that level or the level that you think you can get to and grow to by the end of the year. So I would rather play those teams earlier, Christian, and by the end of the year, maybe you get some credence as far as those voters go because, hey, Nebraska's ran, they lost to Michigan week 2, but ran off, 9 straight fucking wins, right? Whoever the teams are, I'm not going to, go through that part of it, but you know what I mean? But I want to know that. I want to know where I'm at, and then maybe that gives us a better position in a bowl game, and or God, if you maybe get into that Big 12 or Big 10 title game, right? So I'd rather have them earlier on, just so you know where you're at. And if you get your ass beat, like let's be honest, how bad did Oregon get beat by Ohio State last year? Remember that game, Christian? It was like week 2 or 3, wasn't it?
You mean Georgia?
Or Jesus, sorry, Georgia, not Ohio State, Georgia. How bad was that? That was an ass whooping.
Yeah, it was like the national championship all over again.
Yeah. Oh boy, here we gotta hear about this again. No, sorry, Georgia, not Ohio State. I just keep thinking Ohio State should have beat you in that playoff, though, and you know that. Now we won't bring that up though, because your kicker couldn't do it. But but my point is I guess overall, sorry, is that like I would rather play them early on in the season as a fan and move on down the line, and then at least we know what the top team is supposed to be. Now we have 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks to improve and get better. And I guess that's all you can ask as a fan, I think. I think most would agree with me is that each week you get better and better and better and better, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. This is college football. You're not going to, be a team that got beat by a top 4 contending team by 40, and the next week you're going to be the best team on the planet. That's not how it works.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Rather play them early in the season than probably having to play them at the midpoint or into the season. So let's take a look at it here. Chris, your favorite segment. I mean, we talk about this all the time here. The hot take. A Tennessee quarterback will win the Heisman for our hot take this week. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
I want to say yes, but I'm not going to, and I'm going to keep this really short. I'm going to say no. Because if anybody's going to win the Heisman out of the SEC, I think it's Jalen Daniels out of LSU. I think has the best chance, honestly.
I think it can be done. I think it really can be done.
For a guy that's a toe twister, I am actually very, very.
Let me show you how to twist it here for a second. Look, Heupel. Right, he comes from that UCF style of like up tempo spread offense where they're going to throw the ball all around the field, right? I mean, he's already coached a Heisman winner.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Yeah, I know.
Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford, I know.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, I get it.
So he's already coached at one, right? To me, he's kind of like a poor man's Lincoln Riley, if you will.
What do you think Joe Milton wins it?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen crazier things. I mean, we saw Joe Burrow do it, did we not? After transferring to LSU, and then they had that.
Don't bring up his name. You know, I love Joe B. I don't even get a fucking start on his recruiting thing.
Oh yeah,
I get it. But do you think Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix, Bo Nix? I'm missing a couple other quarterbacks in here in this whole list. Let's talking the whole world when you talk Heisman. Really though, this isn't Hendon Hooker to me had a fucking amazing year last year. I love myself some Hendon Hooker. I think he's gonna be the Detroit Lions starter by the end of the year this year, personally. But really?
Yeah, because you gotta go back a little bit, right? Same thing that we just talked about with TCU. Joe Milton won the job over Hendon Hooker, I believe, coming out of that camp. And then it was a couple games in, his biggest problem was, it was his accuracy, right? His accuracy, he could throw the ball a mile. He's a cannon for an arm, but he wasn't connecting. So the thing to me is I look at what Heupel's done as a coach. I mean, dude, every quarterback he's had has put up over 3,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns. Hooker did it twice. Dylan Gabriel did it twice. Mackenzie Milton did it once at UCF, right? I mean, his offenses are a lock to finish inside the top 15 every year, dude.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
And they got a really good quarterback, too, who I'll get into in just a second. Last year, I looked at Joe Milton's stats. He had 10 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, dude, in mop-up duty and spot duty, when Hooker got hurt. He also had a QBR of 204, right? 204%, as a rating there, man, which on 82 attempts, that's not too bad. Now, granted, he didn't play a whole lot last year, but like I said, the only thing that concerns me is a couple years ago when they handed him the keys to the Ferrari, he was kind of swerving. That arm accuracy wasn't where you wanted it to be. And that's why I think ultimately they went to Hooker and they kind of let him do it. As far as, the young freshman in there, right? That was a 5-star, one of the best quarterbacks, arguably the best quarterback in this class over Arch Manning, and we've talked about that ad nauseum, right? You take the namesake out of it. I think this kid's obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the class. Nico Lamaliva. I hope I said that right. Right? He's going to be good. I think he's going to be a great quarterback for him. He's going to flourish under Heupel, but I think it's very unlikely he ends up as a Heisman winner this year because, look, it's an incredibly rare feat for a freshman to do that. I mean, you have a better chance at beating me in a 40-yard dash than this kid does at winning the Heisman this year.
I know you get off to that at night or whatever, 40, but listen. I respect your stat whoring abilities about Joe Milton. Dude, I do think he's going to have a hell of a year, right? Josh Heupel is a hell of a fucking coach. He was a great offensive coordinator. He was a damn good quarterback when he played fucking Oklahoma. I'm not doubting that. Not at all. But you say accuracy. Hendon Hooker, why he was so great in the combine, barring the fucking ACL injury that he had, because that knocked him back, motherfucker's accurate. You got to be accurate. NFL is all about accuracy. That's why look at my monitor over here. I'm a fucking Dolphins fan. Mm-hmm. Tua is my quarterback. You know what's great about Tua? He's not big. He's not fast. Yeah. He's actually almost sometimes you look at him, it looks like a normal human being. But motherfucker's accurate. Just like Drew Brees. Not big, not fast, not a monster arm like Josh Allen or Justin Herbert or those guys or Pat Mahomes. Fucking accurate. You can't teach accuracy. Ask Tim Tebow. That's where I have a problem with Joe Milton. You brought it up. I watched Joe Milton play. Do I think he's a good quarterback? Yeah. Now, a couple years later, I think he's going to be a good quarterback. He's probably worked on it a little bit. But you can't teach accuracy. That's one thing you have or you don't have. And that's why to answer this question, and when I saw it, I'm like, there's just no way with him, man. And it's not because I'm hating on Tennessee. I actually like Tennessee out of the SEC. It's just I don't see it. There's too many other guys. We didn't bring this up in the hot take, but you got to remember, he might have an amazing year. He might have one of those. He's not going to have a Joe Burrow year. Tennessee ain't going to end up in the fucking championship game, Christian. I hate to break it to you. Yeah, I know. Just wait. I know they're going to beat your Georgia boys, beat Bama, and beat LSU, and everybody else that you want to think. I thought that last year because I was really rooting for Tennessee over your boys, by the way. My thing is like there's too many other quarterbacks out there. Drake May, you watch him play? Motherfucker can play. Caleb Williams, he can play. Bo Nix, going to put up some numbers there with Oregon. Michael Penix, put up some numbers. Kid can play too. There's just a lot of guys in that competition. I think this quarterback class this year is crazy loaded, even more than this year and even the year before that. So that's where I have a hard time saying, even though that Joe Milton, I think he's going to have an amazing year at Tennessee. You're exactly right with the stats, Christian. I'm going to wrap it up here real quickly. He's going to have a great year. Heupel can coach. He can put fucking quarterbacks out there. I think Joe Milton's going to be up there, top 10 quarterback, 100%. I don't doubt that at all. But can he crack? I mean, we're talking about the kid at Florida State up there. What, Jordan Travis? I mean, there's some Jalen Daniels at LSU, man. There's some fucking quarterbacks in this year coming up that are like upper echelon. Like I would put them above previous years. This isn't the Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Bailey Zappi like type of shit. Like this is even above that. Like there's a lot of good guys that can play. So like I'm a little worried about where Joe Milton in Tennessee is going this year. You also play in the SEC where there are some defenses.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point that I've got two things I want to say, to this. You bring up a solid point there, right? I think the first thing is if you can succeed in the SEC as a quarterback and you can put up some really good numbers, which again in Heupel's offense you have a really, really good shot to win the Heisman.
100%.
Sometimes it's not about stats. It's about, what's that Heisman moment, right? Again, you think if Tennessee last year, I want to throw this out there. Say, they beat Bama. Let's say they beat Georgia and they kept it rolling, right?
God.
Right?
And Hooker was my favorite.
Yeah, he probably would have won it. Let's say this year, Joe Milton. And then I want to use this analogy here. You said you were watching baseball, right? You were watching a little bit of different some sports here. Every year we see this, right, in baseball, where a young prospect who's uberly talented comes up to the majors. They let him start or they let him pitch. The moment's too big. He gives up, a shit ton of runs, and then they get him some experience, and then he gets sent back down to the minors for a couple of years to continue developing, and then ultimately they call him back up, and he ends up being great anyways, and it works out. I think the same thing can be said here, if you think about it, about Joe Milton. He transferred from Michigan to Tennessee, right? He was competing for the job. He won it. Moment was too big. Needed to work on some of the mechanics and some of the things like with his timing and accuracy. He probably has been sitting. Last year, and when he got to play, he looked good. And I think he is going to be much better. And I think it's going to end up ultimately being a lot better for him in the long run. So I like him. I think, again, he could definitely do it depending on the type of season that not only he has, but Tennessee has this year as well.
Yeah, I'll wrap my thoughts up. I'm a little bit off from your, perspective, Christian, and I respect the shit out of it. I just don't think – I think if this was a different year, it'd be different. But I'm looking at more of the competition around the College Globe. Drake May, Caleb Williams. I mean, there's just so many different – QBs out there this year. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, I said them all. Jordan Travis, Jalen Daniels. I mean, there's just a ton of guys. I'm going to throw in Jeff Sims, and I'll keep that low key. No, I'm just playing. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, there's just so many guys. Like, I just think that's the hard thing to win the Heisman. Not only do I think that like he's going to have a great year with Tennessee, I do. I really, truly do. And I am rooting for Tennessee, man. I was praying to God last year. I lost some money on that Georgia game. No, I get you, man. 100%. I respect your opinion on it. I think we're going to kind of, that's the great thing about college football, right? We're trying to predict shit before it happens, and we're trying to have fun with this. And, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. You might be right, and I'm going to owe you some money or some beer, or even if you drink beer anymore, you probably don't. You probably God only knows what you do. Probably drink wine or some shit now. So I don't know.
Only top shelf stuff. That's it. Only top shelf stuff.
You a high roller?
You got to, man. You've got to a little bit of some small batch bourbon. I sound like a Will Ferrell, sort of inspired guy. Where I read many leather bound books that smell of mahogany. Here, Will brings up a good point. He says if Nick stays healthy, at the very least, he'll be a finalist. I mean, I definitely agree.
We talked 100%.
We talked about him a little bit. I think on last episode.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, anytime a quarterback can put up over 4,000 yards, I mean. And I think he had over 40 touchdowns. I mean, man, you're doing something right there.
No, Will's exactly right. Nick's is going to have. He comes from that SEC background out of Auburn, dude. You brought up his stats last week, Christian. We'll touch on him. I'm just bringing this up real quick. His stats last year were fucking insane, and he's gonna duplicate that this year in the same system, same offense, same coach. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna put some numbers in the Pac-12, dude, without a doubt. That's why I think Nick's. Honestly, if you would have told me the hot take was Nick's wins a Heisman, I would put my money more on him than I would Joe Milton, dude. I know that hurts a little bit. Your pride, because I know you were a SEC dog, so I got to rub it in.
Hey, I'm just saying he could do it, right? The same way you could win in this combine that we're going to do.
You know what, man? I'm one of these guys. Like I'm more of an actions speak louder than words. So we'll see. We'll see how your ass looks running that 40. I can't wait to see that on tape.
Well, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and probably end it right here. But there's some very exciting news is gonna drop to start the next one. We're gonna put our heads together. We're gonna set a date. All right. Yep. We're like a couple of millennial kids trying to get married. We can't figure out when we want to do it. All right. So we're gonna do it, and we're gonna force ourselves to do it.
I can't wait. No, Christian, I'm excited. Hey, by the way, you got everybody that joined in. I appreciate it. Please, comment like that crap, man. I appreciate it, dude. I do. I love talking college football with this guy. I give him a lot of shit. We batter it back and forth quite a bit, though. Like I said, man, we got some things in store here. Gonna change this channel a little bit. We're just in kind of that dead zone right now with college football. I hate to say that, but like college football doesn't end, but it's kind of a soft spot right now. So, no, I appreciate it. Like I said, you guys root us on. I will beat the shit out of Christian if you're rooting for me 100%. This guy couldn't hold my jock strap. So let's be real here. Christian, you got anything else to say as I'm rattling on here, man? I'm just hyped up, dude. I'm ready to go.
No, I think that's it. The reason why I couldn't hold your jock straps because it's too small. You know what I mean? It's too small to hold. So you got to have like delicate hands. That's all. Anyways, I think that's going to wrap us up right there, and we'll see you guys back at it again on Wednesday of next week.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.